Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome to the What Time Is It Dude podcast. So today's topic is about suffering and how atheists question how religion views suffering in the world and why an all-powerful, loving God would allow suffering in the world for innocent people and for anyone.
Yeah, so it's one of the most common objections, I'd say, to God, to like Christianity and Islam, perhaps, and it's basically the argument is pretty the pretty simple. It's one, if God is all powerful, He's omnipotent, and two, if He is good and loving, and three, if the world or the observed reality is that the world is full of suffering, pain, and evil. So, how is that possible?
Why would He allow it?
Yeah, if God could have created any kind of world, like why did He create this one, and why is there suffering? So we're gonna try to just give our thoughts as a Christian or as a Muslim on how we would respond to this question, what we believe about it, and ultimately it's you can't ask it as a very abstract question, but we all live in this world. We all experience different degrees of suffering and pain. So it is a very real question, very understandable question, and one that I've wrestled a lot with. So it's definitely an important question, and I think so I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Do you want to start with Christianity?
Yeah. So I feel like it will be if we each share our full thing. It would.
Okay,
it could go a while, but I can share
we can just go slowly. We can just go slowly.
Yeah.
One thing you remember, at one of our meetings, one thing that I was discussing was you have a surgeon and he's working, in a room, or a doctor who's trying to help someone heal, right? Like surgery or something, and you hear the patient screaming. You don't associate that screaming as, that's the end. He's only gonna suffer, right? This doctor is trying to heal him, and suffering is just part of it. And I think that's the same thing here. We're facing our reality, but we're only seeing what the material reality of what's occurring. So we hear the screams of what's happening around us, but we don't know what the doctor, God, is actually working on to fix, to change in this human, to heal him or her or whatever, to heal them in their path of life for multiple reasons. Yeah, and sometimes it could be as because their sins, would need to be removed, and suffering is just part of of that process. I think that's I think that Christianity would agree to some extent with this view.
Yeah, so I think that at the core of it, there has to be a belief that, the only way this can make sense, if there's a belief in an ultimate final reality that truly is good, and so there's a certain level in which the immediacy of the outcome is we can't there's the immediacy of sacrifice. We don't immediately see that or feel that, but the idea that the ultimate reality, how it will finally work out in the end, that how God will work all these things that we're experiencing to a good end. And so I think that basically suffering can, bad things can be used for a good end. And there's a story in the Bible that is highlights this, where Joseph, who is one of the sons of the 12 sons, the youngest son of Jacob, and his brothers don't like him because he's kind of the favored son, and they basically he goes out to the field and he's always giving dreams about, basically they just perceive him as very condescending and pretentious. He thinks he's better than them. So they beat him up, throw him into a pit, and then when some Egyptian merchants are passing by, they sell him as a slave, and then they just tell their father that he's killed. So basically his brothers do these horrible things to him, and he ends up going as a slave to Egypt. Eventually he
that's the same story in the
prison.
Quran.
Yeah.
That's the same story in the Quran, yeah.
And so basically, eventually, after being in prison, just these miraculous things happen where he starts interpreting dreams for people, and he basically rises in power to become like Pharaoh, the ruler's like second in command. And then eventually there's a time of famine throughout the world, and his brothers and his family come to Egypt because through Joseph's good administration and wisdom, he saved up all this store of food. And so they come, and basically he provides that salvation for his family and reconciles. And it says at the end of that story that what his brothers, or like Joseph is able to say, what my brothers intended for evil, God meant for good. And the way I like to think about it is like, there's obviously a lot more nuance to it about this, but it's like the same thing, the same experience or action in the world. There's the thing itself, and then there's the motives or intentions behind it. And so there's a way in like suffering is the thing itself. Suffering is the experience of the action. Evil is the bad intentions behind it, to do something that causes somebody pain. But the suffering is just the pain itself. And that God takes that pain and he intends it, he uses it for good. He means it for good. They use that pain and they're intending it for evil. So they are the ones who commit the action, but God actually uses that thing for good.
I think you couldn't say it that way, but another way to say it is, instead of God intending to use it that way, he intends to, like, he doesn't stop it. And that causes, that reaction. So he doesn't stop the evil.
Yeah.
He lets it going on, right? Because there's a bigger picture that we humans don't see at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the important thing, where God sees a bigger picture than we are. He's outside of time. He sees the future and the past and everything. And I think that's something that we always ignore about an all-powerful being. I think also, if we say there's no suffering in the good world, will there even be free will?
Yeah.
I think it's impossible for there to be free will in a good world where everyone is perfect. Because that means God has set upon us a structure of set rules that we're not, like, for example, in our first episode where we talked about the moral compass, we said that we all have morals that we know what's right and wrong, but we still go against them. And I think that's what free will is. You have the ability to decide to follow what was given to you or not follow it at all. And in a good world where everything is perfect, where we're all like sinless and do no wrong, there's no free will. Free will is non-existent. We can think we do have it, but we can never have a free will.
Yeah. I think this is getting into the more complex and I think better like way of understanding the big picture, which is the idea of like, I think this question, the only way you can properly answer this question is to go back, why did God create people at all? Why did God create human beings? And because yes, I think any Christian or Muslim will say it's a fundamental part of the answer to why there's evil in the world. Well, it's humans. We're the ones who have done evil. We're the ones who have brought pain to the world. But God obviously created us with a will to. We're not puppets. We genuinely can choose to do what we want to do and believe what we want to believe. And so then obviously somebody could ask the question, well, why is it better to have like freedom and a very evil suffering filled world versus like a lot of people might say they would trade the freedom for but ultimately I think it comes down to the idea of this, that in what is a human being? Because we're different from animals, both in Christianity and Islam. We believe that,
angels.
Yeah, and angels. And it's the idea that in the Bible it says God created man in his image. So he created human beings with the actual will to love or be loved and to enter into a relationship, to so to actually think and have like autonomy. And this is like the great dignity that he gave to us to create us in his image so that we have that capacity. And it's the great weight of responsibility. And so it's like there is a much higher peak of good because we can actually enter into relationship. Like you can't, if he didn't create us with a will, we couldn't actually love or be loved in the deepest like relational sense. And so it comes back to the beginning purpose. The main purpose is that God created us to love him and to be loved by him and to have a relationship with him. And so because of that, in order to do that, like he created us with free wills. But in order to genuinely love, there has to be the possibility that you don't love. Because if he just created us in a way where we have no choice but to love him, and accept that relationship, if he removed that and there's no options, that's not true love. That's not genuine love. Right. That's not real relationship. Right. That's just like he could create like rocks and birds but yeah.
In Islam, we believe that I don't know how similar it is to Christianity, but that angels they don't have free will. Mm-hmm. They only follow God's command. And they're the only ones that don't have free will in any way. Mm-hmm. And they're good because they do whatever God tells them to do, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know how different that is from Christianity.
They're more, I guess, amoral. I guess.
Yeah. So that's how Islam sees them, and I think once you. It's exactly like Peter says. Once you remove the fact that humans, once you remove their free will, they are not humans anymore. The whole concept of being human, in the core of it, I believe, in God creating us, is the free will to do what we want, even within the regulations and rules that God has set to us. And in the Quran, it mentions, humans, you can't reach this without sultan. Sultan means like power, but in the actual translation of it is knowledge. Without knowledge, you can't do anything. And this isn't just about like knowledge about. It was like you can't reach space without knowledge. Mm-hmm. That was like the context of it. And I think we see that where we reach space and we reach the moon. And it's important to understand that our free will corresponds to the knowledge that we gain. Like, without free will, once you gain knowledge, you can't really use it other than the framework that was set on you. I think that's also builds up into, like, AI. We were just talking about it. Mm-hmm. How AI doesn't have free will and will never have it because it has, like, the STEM model that however much it gains of knowledge, it can only follow, if this, it goes to this. If this, it goes to that. So that's what we would be. We would be like this uncontrolling being that isn't human anymore. And I think also one thing that we talked about was we humans are like part, animal. Like scientifically, we are part animal, but at the same time, we have like a divine nature within us that contributes to our, free will. And our free will should be used as a way to bring God goodness to the world instead of, bringing the animalistic instinct out to the world, which won't help, which is the start of where suffering begins, is when you let your animalistic instincts take over the divine nature within you. And I think that's like one of the things where once, I think Christianity would agree about that, where once you have, that animalistic instinct, and it would just push, and animals, even though animals do have free will to an extent, because we can see them loving you. Like, I think that's also could be used as a comparison between like our love to God Like if you feed a dog or cat for some time, it's gonna love you. But is that love like actual, or is it just for the resources that you're giving the animal? If you hurt the animal for a certain time, it would just leave you, right? So I don't think that's like love, like between a human and the animal. Maybe that's also part of your free will, where you're actually loving the animal. And like Peter mentioned, where love is like, it's not a transaction where you're giving and taking. Love is actually like bigger than the transaction. And once it becomes a transaction, it also follows a framework, like I mentioned. And once it follows a framework, it's not free will anymore.
Yeah. And so I think just to give like a little context for the different, like I'd say the different range of options and how people think about it, because ultimately, like the observed reality is we are like living in a world with painful experiences and evil, and there's a lot of, across the world, religions and worldviews, you see a lot of different approaches to how to like deal with that, or how they fit that in their worldview. And so I think there's like a few examples is like there is the more of I don't know Buddhism super well, but I think it's part, and maybe Stoicism a little bit like this too, where it's more the approach to reframing the experience. So it's like you are experiencing this pain, but if you can like disassociate, like detach from the world and like change what you're expecting, and what you can have a peace by like this embracing of the pain and kind of reframing. But it's not ultimately maybe dealing with pain. It's not saying ultimately this evil is something like bad that needs to be fixed, or it's not an injustice that needs to be rectified. It's more of like, this is part of just the way of the world, the balance of good and evil. And if you kind of reframe it, you stop seeing it as maybe evil or injustice, and you just like embrace it. And then there's, I guess, the more like materialist worldview, where you would basically just say like, we're all just animals, and we're basically just all trying to survive, So, and in that, you can't really say that ultimately there's any level of injustice if you have a materialist worldview without God, because it's just there's not any one to measure it by. There's not any standard to measure it by. And then I think like the Christian perspective is a redemptive perspective. So it's the idea that God created us with this capacity to accept or reject Him, to love or not love Him. And human, like the story of Adam and Eve and of sin entering the world, is basically humanity chose their own way, chose to reject God. But through all this, the history of the world, through His plan in creating, He knew what would happen, but He is planning to bring about a redemption that's far greater than the beginning was. Like the human experience of redemption is a higher good than just the human experience of innocence and just a state of innocence.
I think there's like I have a friend who a past friend, and he was Hindu. He was like a Hindu, right? He was Indian, and he was very religious, like in his own religion. And then he saw a girl that was like begging, and she was like 5 or something. She was like really young, without parents or anything, in the streets. And he was telling me how his belief in a higher power, it pretty much went away because of what he saw, and he helped her and everything. Yeah, I remember I laughed at it, because I'm like, you were the savior, you were the angel that God sent to help the girl. You realize God is there because you were there to help the girl. I think that's also something that people don't realize. Like, when you help someone, you shouldn't be thinking, "Oh, God never helped this girl." No, when you are helping that person, right? You are what God is helping through you, and God has set a framework for how the world operates. He doesn't just like one day He's gonna decide gravity. We shouldn't have gravity for like a day. He has like a framework that He sets. He can change it whenever he wills, but it doesn't mean he's going to change it. Like, that's what miracles are. He's changing it for a certain someone that is important enough for it to be changed. But he usually keeps it just the way it is. He doesn't change it for anyone else because there's like a framework that must be followed.
Yeah.
A system,
And even I'd say with miracles, it's still, I wouldn't even put it in the category of like this kind of just, not that you're saying that, but like a random or like, complete, just like break from anything that you see. It's more, like in my perspective, it's more, and you probably agree with this, but it's more like the idea of a miracle is a restoration to the, because
to the original system that was set.
Because it's like, if God created things good in the beginning, there was no pain, no death, then bringing somebody back to the dead or healing or like whatever miracle could be, like a restoration to the original system. Good. It's like a healing of a thing that's broken.
Exactly. So I like, but in like a material way, in a material way, it's like a break from that system.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that's like something that people tend to ignore, where it's like God isn't gonna just push his own forces and like send an angel from the sky to save someone that's suffering. He's gonna use others. When people fight for a certain, be active for a certain cause, that them themselves are, if it's good, obviously, it's something that God wants. That means they're fighting for something that God wants. So they are the force of God at that moment, and it's not like God is gonna change the physical world to fix that suffering. Not because he cannot do that, but once he does that, he's breaching the free will that he set upon us, that he promised us when he first, it's like a very known story where it's like when God created, the brain, he was like, go, and it went, and he was like, come back, and it came back, and he was like, I swear with this brain that this is the greatest creation I've ever made, because it's the free will of the brain to decide whatever it wants, even when God orders it something. That makes it the greatest creation of God.
Yeah.
And it's like the free will is the greatest creation. I mean, I think everyone can agree that us doing whatever we can do whatever we want. The only thing that's restricting us is, society or, laws or stuff. But we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
As long as, we have the knowledge, we can reach whatever, we can do whatever we want.
But in the same way, in God's design of how he created us, of creating us in his image, with a soul, with a rational capacity, with a will to love or not love, he also designed us he designed us in a way to be happy. So the part of the problem of of sin is essentially humans trying to do it without God, to take what he's given us and to do it independent from him. When he's created us as a being, it's only in its right place. We're only happy when we submit to him, when we know him and trust him, when we have that relational trust, and not just this blind submission of but when we have a relational trust, like a child with a father. And so I think that the idea of we just of complete freedom to do whatever, but when we go outside of the way that God created us to be and try to do it without him in the picture, that's where things go wrong. So it's just like a car is designed to have a certain kind of gasoline. You can't just pour soup into the gas tank and it runs. For us, God made our souls in a way that we will be happy and fulfilled when we have relationship with him. And I mean, this is obviously where that's a big difference between Christianity and Islam. But that idea in Christianity is rooted deeply in the Trinity, because it's the idea of, and we'll have another episode where we go more in depth to the Trinity.
Peter just goes straight ahead.
We've spent hours, but I don't want to get into all that discussion. But this is essential in the Christian worldview. For God is relational being within himself. he has love within himself and relationship within himself. So therefore, creating us in an image, we have the, like, he created us to be invited into that loving, relational giving that he has. And so we're created with that, like, need and that fulfillment, that purpose of relationship. And so we only have true, like, happiness and fulfillment when we have that with God. And evil comes in the world by us breaking that design that he created us for and going our own purpose.
Right. Even though newsflash, I don't believe in that, but even though, but I understand what you mean, and it's also like in a similar context within Islam. It's that God, like there's where Muhammad would say that working, when you're in your job, you're worshiping God at that moment too. When you work for your family, so any kind of action that you do while you're believing in God, that any action that you're gonna do is part of worshiping God in your daily life. Because when you work, you're trying to feed your family, trying to feed yourself, and trying to feed others. Because this will then lead on to you being able to do good for the world. Mm-hmm. So all of these actions, you're all worshiping God through them. In the same way, like you're always with a relationship with God. Mm-hmm. In whatever like. I think Peter, when you mentioned being always in a relation, but like in a physical world, like if we're talking more materialistic, how you actually do it, like in action, right? I think in action it would be to not forget the existence of God when you're doing stuff. When you're acting upon your free will, you're not just deciding, oh, this is what I want. You have to put the want of God, what God wants, before yourself, because I think that's also about the relationship of ours with God, of the love between us. Because if we truly love God, if you truly love someone, and they have these set boundaries that they don't want you to cross, if you truly love them, you're gonna not cross these boundaries.
Yeah, and I honestly think this is where a big misconception is about people's idea of what it would mean for God to love us, or for there be to a loving God, because there's the idea that, like, we kind of have an idea in our culture that to love somebody is basically to just affirm everything and anything about, like, any decision they make. But if you see it already, the most natural example in parenting, a parent who deeply loves their child, he will tell them no to things. He will discipline them if they're doing something. Like, he wants them to not. It's not actually a good and loving father who gives the kid everything they want and just pampers them and spoils them. He wants to create a good character in them, and he wants to, like, teach them, like, what's right and wrong, and actually, so if you care about somebody, who they become, their internal character, which is for their good, because those things are good, because, like, if God wants us to be like him, to have goodness,
especially
that's from
as
him.
An all-knowing God. Maybe better than a father that probably might not have the correct moral beliefs or the correct ideology. But God is a perfect being. He knows exactly what is right.
Right. And so it's like when we experience, like in the Bible, it talks a lot about how suffering produces character in it. It's how suffering is like the refining fire, that like a gold is put into the fire to refine or purify the metal. And so there's a way in which, one, God uses suffering for our good in that sense of, like, he is producing a goodness in us and a good character. And that is tough. Like, that's a tough love. It doesn't necessarily fit with the cultural idea of, like, you should just basically, loving just means affirming and giving everything they want. But if God loved us in a different way than that, it would be like less like a father very personally caring about who his child becomes and caring about his child, and more of just like more of a distant, just like, sure, yeah, I'll give you whatever you want. Like, that's not true happiness for us, and that's not true goodness. That's actually way less personal. It's like him having almost a higher standard. That's why I like thinking of it as like it's a higher dignity calling that he gave us to create us in his image, to give us the possibility of rising to relationship with him and having a character that reflects him. But that is a higher thing, and he is going to he's going to produce that. It's going to be maybe different than how we think it should be. Because we think, if he just gave me what I want, if he just made me feel good right now, that's what's best for me. That's not
I think
best for our truest inner self.
One thing about a lot of people that in this generation, and probably 2 generations back, they want happiness more than they want good. Mm-hmm. And then they complain about suffering. But they have to understand that they produce their own suffering when they want so much happiness. I mean, I'm a neuroscience major, so the neuroscience of the brain is not constantly seeking joy. The brain doesn't function about a constant seeking joy at all times. When it does always constantly seek joy, it causes suffering to the body. And we can see that with addiction, where you follow, you want this all the time, this thing that causes you euphoria, that then would result in the breaking down of your body, your brain, and multiple other functions, be like relationship functions, like in the world and society. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing where they would say, like, God wants, this thing from me, but I don't want it because it won't give me happiness as they think of it, right? Mm-hmm. Because everyone has their own view of what happiness is. Yeah. And they have this view that happiness consists of these very set things that might go beyond, like, what nature has set for us. And when actually it's not happiness, when they actually, it's not, I can't decide what their happiness is, but you realize that these people that follow these very set, happiness, they're the ones who are causing suffering for others, and then they come and complain, why is God allow suffering? I mean, if you are causing suffering, you should probably stop it before, you complain about God.
And I think it's just, you have to recognize the difference between temporary pleasure and true good and true happiness. Because it's not like we're saying, oh, just like settle for like being discontent. Like, we believe we'll find like true joy in God, but that path is not one of pure pleasure and experience. It's actually that he uses suffering. He uses those things that we have brought into the world. He uses that for this good purpose. And I think that it's like we have an idea somehow that you can have like happiness or goodness just like in your own design. But if the basic premise is that God is good, he's the source of objective goodness and truth and beauty, then you can't have that apart from him. And if he is a certain way, like we talk about God's holiness, how he is, these aren't just like a list of random rules that he gives us to be just because he likes making rules. It's who he is, it's his character, and he wants us to be like him and to have relationship with him. And the Bible says God is light, in him there's no darkness at all. So we have to come into the light and live in the light. We can't just have all of the sin and independence and all of our own ideas about goodness and still believe that like we can be in fellowship. So God's holiness is not just a list of rules. It's who he is. It's his character. And so when we're thinking about finding true happiness and true goodness, it's in, you can't have that apart from God. And so you can have like temporary pleasure, I guess, but, I guess I don't know where I'm going with that. I got a little lost in the sauce, but basically the idea of that, like, you can't have it independent from God.
I think also that, pleasure, there's always, God has given us this life, this reality to enjoy. He didn't just, he also wants our, the pleasure that we seek that's temporary. He also gives us
it's good gifts from him.
It's gifts from him. And he's not like telling us, oh, don't eat this, don't do that, don't. It's like, no, he does gives us a framework where you can reach this goal in a good way, in a way that he accepts, right? Be it through marriage, through other like kind of ways. you can reach that euphoria that you can find in other ways that causes sin, and that's outside of God's framework. And I think that's also important to, like, if you connect it to suffering, if you follow God's framework, the way He sets it. Because if we say, why does He allow that? He does not allow it. That's why He has that framework. He doesn't allow suffering. That's why He has the framework. But people decide to sidestep that framework and go to another kind of framework that they set upon themselves. And once they do that, then it's because God gave us free will, like we discussed. Then at that moment, it's not within, it is within God's control to stop us, but because He gave us goodwill, free will, He gave us the ability to do whatever we want. So at that moment, you have sidestepped. So it's not God's fault anymore. You can't blame God for the gift He gave you, and for you. It's like someone gives you a knife to cut fruits with, and then you go kill someone with. You can't blame the person that gives you the knife and say, no, why did you give me the knife if you knew I couldn't kill someone with it? Because He gave us this set of frameworks of morals that He expects us to follow, so we can actually do, good. But we as humans tend to, because of sin of, Satan and all the forces that act upon us, we tend to sin and use the knife that was given to us in ways that aren't holy and not within God's framework.
Yeah, and I think, I guess one last point I'll add of as one more point that I see as essential to the Christian view on suffering is that, and I think I'm correct in saying this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Christianity is the only religion or worldview where God Himself steps into the suffering, into the broken world. So that's the idea that Jesus, the Word becoming flesh, the eternal Word of God taking on human flesh and living a life as a human. So He was tempted. The devil led Him into the wilderness for 40 days and was tempted. He was ultimately beaten, spit on, mistreated. He was born into poverty in a stall, like an animal stall, and He was eventually basically tortured and killed. And so that is a huge aspect of what we believe about suffering, because we believe that God is not unable to, He doesn't ask us to do something that He wouldn't. He stepped into the suffering, not because He needed to, but just to show His love for us, to demonstrate, and to show that He is near and not far. Yeah.
Define what a last word is.
Huh?
What it's last point.
That's true. That's true. I started a whole can of words. Yeah, that's true. This may be a whole nother episode.
No. That was a whole 2 episodes.
Yeah. That's fair. No. That's fair. But yeah, basically that. And there's one. Just let me get one last thing in about this Jesus being on earth, entering into human experience, is that there's a story that I think sums up really good how we can think about suffering. And God's view on suffering, where Jesus goes to His friends, is Mary, Martha, and their brother Lazarus, and they send for Jesus saying, Lazarus is sick, he's about to die. And Jesus comes after he's already dead. And Jesus knows the future. He knows that He is about to raise Lazarus from the dead. He knows that He has the power to raise him from the dead. So you would think maybe He would tell him, don't worry, don't cry, I'm gonna make everything right? Because it's still the same thing we're talking about of there's a future good coming, but we're not experiencing it in its fullness right now. But it says Jesus wept with them, and He was filled with great emotion and had compassion. He was filled with compassion with them, and He wept. And then after that, He goes and heals him and brings him back to life, solves the problem. And I think that's key to when we talk about this of how through suffering and through pain we will reach a good. That doesn't mean that God doesn't have compassion, or it doesn't invalidate our experience of suffering. We do experience pain. We should feel sadness. We should cry. And God sympathized with that. Jesus wept. So that's sorry. That was
yeah,
a lot of extra stuff.
After this, I probably should explain to Peter what the last point means.
That's true.
But yeah, so this is the end of episode 2. Thank you for listening to us rambling like always. See you in the next episode.
See you guys.
Bye.